This right here is an Atowak. It is a watch that has a wandering hour. Very interesting. Let's talk about it. Heads up, first off, the Atowak here, the Ettore Drift, was sent to me. I do not have to send it back. The watch itself is an automatic watch. So that is also really cool to see that while you can typically find higher complication watches in quartz, this one is actually made in automatic. This wandering hour feature is really interesting. I showed this when it first came in immediately to my wife, to my family, because it's different. And granted, the case is a little bulky, which we'll get into, but the watch itself is entirely different from anything that I own. It's got more color, it's got more pizzazz, and the complication itself is really unique. It's not something you see all the time. And that's what I love about it. This watch right here is a conversation starter. This is a watch that you wear somewhere and someone notices immediately what you're wearing. And they ask what's going on and you try and show it to them. What's interesting is when I did show it to my family, a lot of them couldn't figure out what the heck I was showing them. And then they're like, oh, okay, I see it now. That's really cool. And to a person, they all thought it was very interesting and very neat. And I obviously am one of those. I typically don't take a lot of brand requests from companies out of China, but this is particularly unique, particularly different, so I had to have it. I had to get my hands on it, and I had to see it in the metal. So function and sizing, some of the big things. The specs are on the screen. The watch itself wears quite well. Now, the lug-to-lug is the more important measurement there because it's so wide. It's going to span a lot longer across your wrist than you imagine, along with, I should say, your wrist. Whereas the lug-to-lug dimension is actual presence, how it's going to feel in overall size on your wrist, overall height. And the watch wears actually quite well. Now, granted, again, it's bigger, it's heavy too. The weight is also on the screen. It is a chunky watch. So one of the things you need to know when you're going to wear this is just know that it's going to have some presence. Now, this is on a strap too. So you're going to need to typically tighten the strap down to make sure the watch sits flat. So that way it doesn't bobble around unless you like that sort of thing, but I don't. And so the watch itself needs to be pretty secure given its weight and overall size. But that shouldn't detract, it's still very functional. Now the crown being on the left side is unique, it's different, it makes sense given the shape of the right side of the case and how it's rounded, but it does make actual function or use of the watch a little difficult because you have to take it off in order to do it. Plus, my left hand, I have learned, is really not very good with crowns. It's not used to it, so it doesn't know which way to turn it, and it's just one of those things that you don't think about until you actually do it. You know, one hand's good at one thing and you don't ever think about it again. My left hand is not the best at knowing how to wind these exactly. The feeling of the movement is actually quite nice. Now it feels like a single winding rotor, meaning it winds in one direction, it's idle in the other direction, and so on stuff like that, or watches like that, the idle movement or the rotation of the oscillating weight in the idle position can sometimes be very fast and you can feel that rotation a little bit, but that's true on Valjoux 7750s, that's true on a lot of different watches regardless of price point, so that I wouldn't detract from it. The actual feeling of winding it is relatively smooth, a lot smoother than I expected, and setting it is obviously quite simple. There's only one single crown position, you pull it out, and then you rotate the crown, and that changes what arm is pointing at the minutes. Obviously, as you can tell here, your arms come in from the left side, and they point at the minute track on the right side to tell you what time it is. If the arm has a 6 on it, it's pointing at 30, it's 6:30. Pretty straightforward, and actually, frankly, easier to read than my normal watches. And I've gotten used to reading a watch the normal way. This is even easier. It's not quite as easy as a digital watch, but it's pretty darn easy, and still it's mechanical. And that is different, that is unique. Having a digital layout or numbers that are reading directly off of the watch face without having a really expensive complication like a sight work or something like that is actually quite nice because I'm still wearing an automatic watch, but I'm reading the numbers in a lot easier, quicker fashion. That's kind of neat as well. The case finishing is pretty nice. There's a little bit of a feeling where this top case, there's a top case that's blue where it meets the bottom end of the case where it's hanging over just a little bit. And so you can feel a little roughness there, not obviously sharp, but you can feel a little bit of a separation between those two cases. The actual detail on the lugs is interesting. They've got this bead blasted center, polished exterior, brushed top, and you also have this see-through case back to actually see the movement itself working underneath. So the level of detail in the watch is actually surprisingly good. I mean, obviously you never know what you're going to get, and I was very interested in seeing this in the flesh, and it's very nice. I like it actually quite a lot. Now, I typically won't wear something like this all that often. It's a little too loud for my day-to-day job. If I'm going into the warehouse and I'm wearing this, I could probably bash this up and that would make me feel bad. I don't go to social gatherings enough to need to have a specific conversation starter like this, but it's definitely cool for someone that does do stuff like that. Thanks to Atowak for sending it to me. I really like it, more than I expected. It's different. It's more of what I said I was going to cover on the channel, different style watches. So let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think? Do me a favor and subscribe. It's a big help, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.